The question of the indigenous people in Northeast is a very heatedly debated subject. Today, the question of indigenous people in this region is something that has become the center of discussion from various angles. Several groups and organizations are working to ensure that the indigenous, the locals of this region, be they from any of the seven sister states, they get their rights, they are protected and they feel secure. And one such organization that is working in this direction is the Northeast People's Forum. And now, here joining us is Mr. N Ibungochoubi. He is the Secretary General of the Northeastern People's Forum. Sir, thank you so much for giving us your time. So, first of all, I would like to begin this session by asking you, your organization, Northeast Indigenous People's Forum, what is it all about? And like, when did it start? And just give us a brief walkover regarding your organization.
In fact, just before Corona, different civil organizations and people who were concerned about the people of the northeastern region, who are indigenous people, being marginalized by influx of people from outside the country, gradual influx. And we got together, and formally it was so-called Christian in 2017. And post-Corona, we started doing some activities. The primary reason for the formation of this Northeast Indigenous Peoples Forum is looking at how progress, how development from remaining part of the country has come into the Northeast, where our people are not the stakeholder because of lack of education, lack of whatsoever it is. And one important aspect is the entire northeastern region borders with many foreign countries, say Myanmar, China, Bangladesh. The gradual influx of people throughout the year, throughout the ages, they have taken away the opportunity of the indigenous people. Even to some extent has affected the demographic profile, depriving our indigenous people the economic opportunities, the job opportunities, because we have not been prepared for that particular status. However, in the recent years, we thought of observing the World Indigenous Day, which usually falls on August 9. And last year, we celebrated the World Indigenous Day in Shillong, in Meghalaya. The theme of the World Indigenous Day is Youth for Change and Self-Determination. Hence, we decided in our last executive meeting in Itanagar that Northeast Indigenous Peoples Forum would open a platform for the youth. Earlier, the youth used to be below 33 years, but the UN has changed the age limit from 14 to 24. So now we have invited all the youth from the entire northeastern region to share their thoughts on our theme for the essay writing competition. Youth, their role, their responsibility for the promotion and preservation of native and indigenous culture, tradition, in these changing times, in the changing world. So we are trying to initiate the very thought among the youth that how can they be an agent not only for preserving but promoting our indigenous culture. And I think this is one focus that we would like to culminate on August 9 this year. We would like to have the prize distribution. We would like to invite all the children who have taken part. We would like to share our thoughts. I think this is one way we thought we should ignite among the youth of this region who are the indigenous people, how they can in the future protect themselves. They can initiate, they can be the effect for change as we understand from the UNESCO.
So, sir, this organization of yours, when was it formed?
Formally, it was initiated in 2017. However, there was a gap because of, as I said, the world COVID-19 pandemic. And immediately after the COVID-19 pandemic, all our colleagues, all our friends from these different state chapters, very unfortunately, we are yet to include Sikkim. We are now 7. We are trying to include Sikkim also in the forum. The very coming World Indigenous Day on August 9. We would be inviting our friends and colleagues from Sikkim to a part of this collective, I wouldn't say force, but a collective platform to share our concerns of the indigenous people.
So, sir, you are now right ahead of the World Indigenous Day. You are now reaching out to the various communities in the Northeast. You are planning out programs and other such activities for the youth, the young children. Tell us something about your objective right now. How you are planning to go about this, and like what is the ultimate aim that you want to achieve out of this exercise?
In fact, I would be, we would be very frankly saying, it is the constitutional duty of the government of India to protect the indigenous people of this region, particularly because we have not been able to pick up in the sense of development, whatsoever development was happening around the country. When big cities, big states have progressed, even if it is the business opportunity, I would like to ask, even in Assam, who are the key players in the so-called developmental world of business? The people, the indigenous people, are now mere carriers of goods rather than being a stakeholder, being a part of that business or being a part of that progress. We would like our children to be a stakeholder of that growth. Now, looking at the development that has progressed in other parts of the country, in the other world, we were far behind. We were not at the same so-called level. From that process, from that aspect, we need to ignite our young children who are the indigenous people that they have to compete with the rest of the world, provided we offer them a same playing level field. The Indigenous Peoples Forum, we are sharing our concerns that we should not be deprived of our economic, political rights of any development. And unfortunately, the developments of the geopolitics in our neighboring states, you take it Bangladesh. Bangladesh was politically very unstable. The influx of so-called people from Bangladesh, their need to survive, the fight of survival in our own region has deprived our own indigenous people. Say, if you look at Arunachal Pradesh, the Arunachal Pradesh, Myanmar, Manipur, Nagaland, we border Myanmar. The political upheaval or their own instability creates an impact in the neighboring states. I was just told that Arunachal Pradesh shares about 500 kilometers with Myanmar. Mizoram alone shares 520 kilometers. Manipur about 398 kilometers. And Nagaland about 250 kilometers with Myanmar. Altogether, we share an international border with Myanmar around 1,600 kilometers. When there is a political upheaval in Myanmar, you can imagine that influx, that impact on our neighborhood, which means we should be prepared to have an inherent culture, inherent system, thereby we are protected. Rather than saying later that refugees have come, people have infiltrated through the ages, thereby changing the demographic profile. When their arrival changes the demographic profile, we are deprived of our own political rights. I think this is one key issue for the reason why we need to come together, share the common platform, and convey our message that the people, so-called the indigenous people of the northeastern region, need to have a conscious effort at the central level and among our own political thinkers. Assam should have its own indigenous state of law. Manipur should have its own indigenous administrative style. Nagaland should have. Thereby, the state should have its own protective law. Tomorrow or today, 1,000 people have come in. They should remain as people who have come from outside. There should be a statutory law to say that they are the refugees or they are the people from outside. Absorbing them gradually deprives the indigenous people. I think this was the common ethos that we got together, I think, right from 2014, 15, 16. And it culminated in the formation of the Northeast indigenous people in 2017.
So, sir, as someone who represents the Northeastern Indigenous Peoples Forum, I would like to ask you something. Like, what do you think is the current status of the indigenous people of Northeast? Because, see, in today's age, India is fast growing as an economy, and also we have a lot of investment. A lot of things are happening in the Northeast, be it Assam or even in the neighboring states. A lot has happened which did not happen in the past. So in this changing circumstances, where do you think currently the indigenous peoples stand, and where do you and like how do you think they need to move ahead from this particular point?
Our simple or humble request, so called to the polity of the northeastern region, be it administration or be it judiciary or the executive, our own political thinkers or who are in the arena of politics, they should realize that the people of Northeast should not be a mere carrier of a business. Suppose you have the highway coming in. You might have a super highway in Northeast. Our people, indigenous people, should be a part of that growth rather than being a coolie or a courier of that good. This is what we feel. If India is growing, if the world is growing, the people of the Northeast, we look at our children being a stakeholder, being a key partner in that growth rather than being an employee. So how do we build the capacity of our children, indigenous people who are growing today? There has to be an inherent growth within their own respective states, at least to protect the indigenous people, politically first. So we are trying to bring about the consciousness among the young people that you should be a part of that growth rather than being a carrier. If there is a transport happening, be a part of that growth, not as a carrier.
Okay. And so, under this current government, the current NDA government, we have seen in the last 10 years a lot has happened in Northeast. There's been a lot of work with regards to connectivity, infrastructure. A lot of investment has come in. If we look at the records, then the Prime Minister, as well as a lot of central ministers, have made several visits to the Northeast, which was not the case earlier. So, and also, on top of that, we are aware that there are several faces from the Northeast that have got representation. So, and many of them are indigenous people. So, in such a context, how do you think the indigenous people are faring under the current government? And now, recently, we saw this government returning for the third time. So, what do you think can be is something you expect from the government, or what is your assessment in the last 10 years, and what you take can happen in the next 5 years as well?
The primary reason for the formation of the Northeast indigenous people, as we have stated, that we are trying to invoke a new thought among the new generation so that whether there is a program from the central government for development, for growth, if there is an investment of 500 crores for any project in the Northeast, whether it is Assam or Manipur, who would be the key partner of that particular investment? Our children, next generation, should be conscious and they should be a part of it. Now, we should not be a part where we should be exploited as a lever class. From that perspective, the very objective of having this Northeast essay writing competition is recognize yourself who you are. When you begin thinking as the children of the soil, I wouldn't say son of the soil, because there is a very serious concern about gender.
Yes.
And we should always say the children of the soil. When our young boys and girls, they know their dress, they know their life cycle, right from day one they are born till they die. There is an indigenous culture. And with that, they should start loving this soil as the children of this soil. Sure. And when they begin to love this soil, even with the way they wear, even the way they perform their rituals, we would like to remind our new generation that how you identify yourself with this soil is your own traditional cultures that you have inherited from generation to generation. And they should be preserved, that should be preserved, and you should be the agent to promote also. As long as you have that feeling of preserving it and owning up the responsibility to promote your own culture, you will have the love for the soil. And if you have the love for the soil, whatever the case is, you will defend your soil, irrespective of political or economics. Of course, I am not an economist, but as our children would begin loving their own culture, loving their own traditions, they would start loving the soil.
So, keeping the last 10 years in mind, are you hopeful for a positive outcome in the next 5 years for the people of the region?
I suppose so, because our generations, I would say that we have crossed 60. And our generation literally should blame ourselves that we have failed. At least now, today, who are at the age group of 14 to 24, as the UNESCO has said that the youth should be the element for the agent of change to protect and preserve their own culture. I think from that perspective, as we leave behind a legacy as the founders of the Northeast Indigenous Peoples Forum, we are trying to expand the very concept to hundreds and thousands of young children today. So when they grow up, at least they should be able to create that awareness to love and create their own sphere where they should be a part of this growth. I think this is the only initiative that we are taking up, and I'm sure at least in decades to come, our children will own up the responsibility to at least love their own culture, love their own traditions, and love the soil. And we should not be a platform, we should not create a platform by on ourselves that we should be exploited. We should be the persons who would be key players in the growth. We should be a stakeholder in that growth.
Mr. Ibungochoubi, a short while back, you talked about the infiltration, the illegal infiltration into the Northeast. As we know, the issue of illegal infiltration from Bangladesh is something that has been highlighted a lot. And mostly the spotlight falls on Assam. A lot has been written, discussed, debated about the level of this infiltration that has happened in Assam. But something which we at Northeast Alive feel is that the infiltration that has happened in other states of the Northeast is something that is kind of overlooked. Give us a sense of how this illegal infiltration is affecting other states, be it Meghalaya, Mizoram, Nagaland, or even Arunachal, any of the states, apart from Assam. How do you feel illegal infiltration is affecting the very identity and security of the indigenous people?
As I said, when you have a neighboring country which is not stable, it creates an impact in the neighboring countries. And in fact, the entire Northeast, as somebody said, has become a dumping ground of all so-called of the mass exodus from the neighboring states or neighboring countries. The voice of Northeast Indigenous Peoples Forum is very clear. All the state governments, be it Assam, Nagaland, Manipur, Mizoram, Tripura, Arunachal Pradesh, all the states should have its own state mechanism. All the states, all the respective states, they can initiate their own act. They can pass a bill in their own assembly to protect first. I think the entire country is least bothered about what is happening in Manipur. The entire country is least bothered about what happened in Assam. And now, from now onward, our request or our initiative is we would be approaching all the state governments that they should have their own respective act or law within their own state to initiate a law. Thereby, they protect their own people. And it is not a very difficult task. Right from the SDO, right from the police station, they should know who are the people who have arrived. Very simple. And this has to be initiated today. Though people have committed a mistake, it is not late. You can always start today so that our children would be at the safer zone. This is the initiative that we have been trying to discuss at different platforms.
Mr. Ibungochoubi, this chat we have been having so far, I think it will be incomplete if I don't ask you about Manipur. You're yourself a resident of Manipur. It's been over a year now. Manipur has been through a lot. But still, the flames of the flames of animosity and anger, they still persist. As someone who is a resident of that state, I want to know, like, from you, what is the way forward? Like, what has happened has happened, but like, what can be done to ensure a better future? What can be the road towards achieving a solution? I want to know from you.
If at all, if we look for a solution, we already had a solution when from day one. Whether you call May 3 or 4, when it started last year, it's over a year that has gone by. And whenever I join or when I take part in a discussion, we have been saying that we should be first committed. Forget about the political acumen, forget about the political wisdom. As I have always stated, or as I have always mentioned, that there was no commitment from the government, whether it was the central government or the state government, first to contain that crisis. And I always quoted that one very famous IPS officer said that throughout the length and breadth of this country, any kind of crisis, any kind of political turmoil, any kind of violence can be contained within 72 hours. This is a statement from a very senior IPS officer. We are capable, India is capable of containing, controlling any kind of mob violence, any kind of conflict within 24 hours, at the most 72 hours. And if it goes beyond that, what I'm going to say is, if it goes beyond that, the government in power is a part of this crisis. Okay. Now, our question is it true that if we take by that statement, there should be a commitment, honesty? The cut is very deep, the wound is very deep, it will take its own time to heal. It will take its own time to heal. However, what is the government thinking? Let the people know that this is step number 1. This is step number 2. This is step number 3. So far, we are deprived of that commitment, a vocal statement from both the governments. As I would say that the same party in Manipur, the same party in Delhi, and the same political party, the people should be told that this is our first step, second step, third step. Whether they are successful in implementing or realizing those steps, at least let the people hear, to at least gain that confidence. I think that is not coming out.
So what you are saying is an action plan is the need of the hour, right?
I think so. Because as a person, as a human being, at least you need to convince the people that this is what the government is thinking, rather than saying that you don't trust among yourselves. As I would always say, that a senior citizen, a senior guardian, and a responsible parent, when their children are fighting and watching for 1 year, I think they are the most irresponsible parent, as I have stated earlier.
Okay, so on that note, sir, since we are talking about indigenous people, yes, and we are also talking about these communities which are living along the Myanmar border, another contentious issue that has been raging for the last few months is that of FMR, Free Movement Regime. Now the center deciding to scrap the FMR effectively. We know that there are several communities along these various states, be it Manipur, Nagaland, Mizoram. There are communities that have been exchanging along the Myanmar border. There are tribes who are spread across the border, both in India and Myanmar. So how do you view this the scrapping of the FMR thing? Because I'm asking it purely from the perspective of the indigenous people. These are age-old traditions, age-old ties that are on the danger of getting snapped at a point. So what do you make out of this FMR thing, or do you think there needs to be some way this thing can be amended so that these age-old ties they do not get severed at all?
It is more of a political belief that India does not permit dual citizenship. I think this has to be fundamentally very clear. Now, a person trying to be citizens of both the countries, these are basic fundamental issue. The issue is a person born and brought up in a foreign country, sneaking into another country after they have matured and trying to gain the citizenship and trying to get the benefit of that particular country. I think the basic idea is on that. The freedom of movement or freedom or access to any other country, it can happen. However, the issue is not the freedom of movement. It is the issue of influx of population who would be coming into your own country and claiming citizenship to gain benefit out of that. I think the basic question begins with that essence. Our issue today is, what are the mechanisms within our own country or within our own states, particularly the northeastern states? Do you have a mechanism to identify who are born and brought up? You say you give a deadline. However, you cannot say that a child born in Bangladesh, a child born in Burma, today, after 15 years, he can come and deprive our own children who have suffered here. Now, that is the key issue that is emerging today. From that perspective, the Northeast Indigenous Peoples Forum, we would be discussing at various levels as to how our own states, our own respective states, can build a mechanism to protect the indigenous people, which means they would refrain people from outside taking into permanent citizenship. That would be something that we would be discussing. We are not also in that authority. However, we are trying to enlighten our children as to how, when you grow up, your future children, grandchildren will be protected from people who are coming from outside and depriving your own constitutional rights.
So, Mr. Ibungochoubi, I would like to ask you this question: that World Indigenous Day is coming. You're all having a huge program ahead of that. I would like to ask you, what is the message you want to give to the indigenous people of the Northeast right ahead of the World Indigenous Day? Like, what is the thing that they need to look out for? What advice would you give to the people at this critical juncture? Because I think we are at a very critical juncture of history. So what advice do you have as someone who represents the Northeast Indigenous Peoples Forum?
Of course, it would be my own personal thought. We have shared at different fora in our Northeast Indigenous Peoples Forum. Be children of the soil. This is our philosophy, which means the life cycle, the day you are born till you die. There are certain culture, there are certain traditions that you have inherited from generation to generation. You should imbibe that philosophy irrespective of any religion you belong to. You can drive a car, you can belong to any religion. However, when there is a ritual, when there is a function, say, even if you have Bihu today in Assam, there are children who would be using a loudspeaker. However, the basic ethos is that very dance, the very culture, and that community feeling. Every single tradition, every single society has its own indigenous game, indigenous culture. Right from day one, you are born. You might be a Hindu, you might be a Christian, you might be a Buddhist. However, that indigenous culture of the life cycle, when you die, there is a ritual that your forefathers have been continuing for thousands of years. When you get married, I have some friends from Nagaland, and the last 2 years, as I have been the Secretary General of the Northeast Indigenous People, there are children who come up to me and they tell me, sir, when we get married, we would like to wear our own traditional dress. Though we are Christians, we would wear our gown. However, we would like to preserve our own ancestral values. Now, that gives a kind of a thought by remembering your ancestors that you belong to the son of the soil. And that consciousness should come from the children. And we are passing away phase, plus 60. At least we are trying to build a platform like the Northeast Indigenous Peoples Forum. And I suppose by the end of this year, we would be having at least a couple of thousands of children through our programs. We have our essay writing competition. We have a youth debate. We are having a folk festival. We are focusing for a folk festival in the month of January. So all the children at the age group of 14 to 24, they should know their own folk music. You might have a guitar, you might have a piano, yet your root will be defined or identified by that folk culture of your own, which will define yourself, which will tell yourself that you are the indigenous people.
Okay. So the mantra today that we have, that all the indigenous people have to follow, is that you are the children of the soil, and that has to be preserved at any cost. Mr. Ibungochoubi, thank you so much for speaking to Northeast Live. That was a great conversation we had with you. So that was Mr. Ibungochoubi, from the Secretary General of the Northeast Indigenous Peoples Forum, speaking to Northeast Live regarding their programs and their and various issues ahead of the World Indigenous Day. With camera person Jayanta, this is Jaydeep Hazarika for Northeast Live.